recording. Okay.
Somebody tell me that.
Off your head. Yeah, I've heard that also before. All right, Boker Tov, everybody. We learned today Lilu Nishmat Avigdor Chayavram ben Meir Tzvi Rachalea. In addition to that, it is for the refuah shlema for those who were injured yesterday and any other injured parties from any other terror attacks. Thank you. And let me just put this over a little here, this little bit here. And before you open your book, you close your book on purpose. I'm going to ask you a question before you look inside. Two things. First, I want to tell you a brief, I guess it's a story, a brief vignette. It's something that happened a couple of days ago because it fits in exactly what we're talking about. What we've been talking about in this section has been this idea of yirah. And we said that with the yirah, the awe of Hashem is this constant awareness of Hashem in your life. And you have heard me tell you many times over the years that I read something and then the same day someone asked me a question about it, or I did something, I came across a topic, and then it was exactly the Gemara I was learning. Well, I had 2 days ago probably the most obvious, clearest, insane thing happened to me I would have literally thousands of entries. I am in the middle of learning Shisha Sidrei Mishnah Parak, more in Parak Yomi, whatever it is. And the goal is to finish by June 20th next year. So at the last day of school, I'll make a siyum on Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. I'm in the middle of learning Maaser Sheni. Maaser Sheni, without going into all the details right now, it's one of the matanot that you have to give when you've grown crops and you pick fruit from a tree in Israel, Trumot and Maasrot, and there's Maaser Sheni some years and Maaser Ani other years. Fine. So in Maaser Sheni, there's a Mishnah. I was on a bus the other day. I know it's shocking. I was on a bus the other day, and I happened to have I was learning my Mishnah out, and I closed the book right after I finished a certain Mishnah. The Mishnah was about the following topic. What happens if it's a time Beit HaMikdash, and you find a bag of coins, and there's a letter mem for Maaser, or a kuf for korban. What's the status? Or an animal has a tag on it that has a letter on it, because there are time periods where you had to be very careful because of whether it's the Romans or the Greeks or the whoever, the Poles and the Turks and whoever it would be that week, the anti-Semite of the week. So you had to be doing it in shorthand. So if you found a kuf, it meant this. You found a mem, fine. And I closed the book, came home. The next morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, I get a message, a video message with no names. Person has in his hand a coin. It's a half shekel coin. He said, I don't know what to do with it. I found that it has a mem on it. On the other side says Maaser. What do I do with it? I said I almost fainted when he asked me that question. I said, okay, you learn about Shiloh HaKan, and someone asked me about, I found a bird in a tree the next day. Okay, that's cool. The most obscure, I've been doing this for a lot of years. No one's ever asked me that question. I mean, I told him, I can't believe it. I was ready to faint. So cool. I opened the book and I said, I sent him a picture. This is the very last mission I learned yesterday. It's not that I learned it a week or two ago. The very last one I had learned. That's really cool.
Where?
I don't remember, but I told him what to do. I told him, if you find it right in the immediate area, post it in a group, and someone has obviously used it to transfer the kedusha of their Maaser Sheni onto the coin and Trumot Maaser. I said, if it's just you found it somewhere on the street, then you should destroy it. So, because it contains kedusha of the Maaser Sheni. It's a half shekel coin, regular half shekel coin. Today, a regular half shekel coin. No, halavai. No. Had that been a bit of different discussion altogether, that'd be even cooler. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, now before you open your book, as we said, we were talking about yirah and the idea of what does it mean? The question is, let me just find what I want to tell you here, ask you. How do you do it? What would you think? What do you think you have to do in order to acquire such a midah of yirat Hashem? And it means, again, keeping in mind, you don't want to do the wrong thing at any time. Let's make it very simple. What would you think would be one of the important things to do in order to acquire such a character trait?
Keep a reminder.
Excellent. Keep a reminder. Meaning front and center, it's always on your mind. Very good. Okay. Yes.
Where you're watching.
Where you're watching on the other hand. I know what you mean. Yeah. So when you talk about do something out of pattern, so I'm a pretty routine person, not to the extent of being OCD, but definitely routine. But this morning, I borrow my daughter's car sometimes to drive up the hill if I'm lazy, don't want to walk up the hill. And I got out and finished davening. I went to look for the car key and the Einenu. I mean, it went from the street to the shoulder. Where could it be? I look in my talis bag. I look on the floor. I said, I have no idea. I traced my steps. I said, wait a minute. I did something different this morning. I went into the kitchen first and got a cup of water before I sat down on my seat. And I put it down on the counter. So when you do things sometimes out of pattern, okay. Anyways, so yes, that would probably be the number one thing. If you want to take a look in your book with chapter 25, which in the book begins here on page 153, the way, the methods in which one can acquire Yirat Hashem. In order to acquire this midah, you have to pay attention and be thoughtful and cognizant and aware of two things. First, you have to realize God is everywhere. He sees everything, big or small. Nothing's hidden from him. Not the great things you might do, the big things, the teeny little things. Both the big and the good, the little things. The bad things doesn't mean bad. It means like the in English. Person. When a person gets like makot, it's achenikle and all. Okay, I'll think of the word, but you could look in your English. Or nichbad, or the honorific thing. So nikle is the opposite of honorific. So he sees and he understands, and with no distinction means that they're always present. He always sees what's going on. Now, this should sound familiar to you. Why? I'm going to bring it up on my phone. Why should this sound familiar to you? Sounds like Shema. Sort of. How? How does it sound like Shema? That's V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. By the way, remember, it's not V'ahavta. V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha, yes. In our mind. In our lives. That's correct. But this is different than saying we have God in our life. This is saying it's a constant awareness. And more than that, it's that we are aware that Hashem sees and watches over everything. So the Rambam, when he made the Gimli covering the 13 principles of Judaism, which most, I can't say all because I don't know, but most are to counter Christianity. Because if you look at them almost one for one, you'll see that it's exactly the opposite of what Christians believe. Number 10. And I have a question about this one. I'm going to mention you the question. I don't have a good answer. So if someone comes up with an answer one day, please let me know. I believe with perfect faith. That God, not too scary. God sees and knows every action of every person and also all their thoughts. For it says in the pasuk, and this is the concept of hashgacha. Hashgacha means to watch over, to supervise. Hashem is always watching. Hashem is always listening. My question is, there's 13 anima means, it's the only one that he brings a proof text for. Why does he have to bring a pasuk to prove it? I don't know the answer to that. The other place you may know this from is from Pirkei Avot, because it's actually said many times that a Levaya, right? It says nowhere. He's going to actually talk about it at some point. Yeah, he's going to come up to it in a few minutes, but we're going to see it about Dama. We're going to come to it. So why should I say it outside? Let's continue the paragraph. It says, hello, in pasuk, sorry. The entire universe is filled with his glory. And furthermore, it says, it says that Hashem fills, again, we're talking anthropomorphically, that Hashem fills the entire universe, the heavens and the earth. ואומר מי כהשם אלוקינו מגביל לשבת המשביל לראות בשמיים בארץ, ואומר כי רם השם ושפל ירד הגבוה ממרחק ידע. Psukim he's brought to just prove that Hashem is in fact everywhere. Now, I don't know how you worked it when you were raising kids or when you were with families who had kids or observing at people's tables. When you wanted to tell your child they were doing something wrong, they were behaving, not crazy, but doing something wrong, we often used an example. Said, would you do that if so-and-so were at the table, right? So we used to choose Rabbi Shapiro, actually, principal of Ari Crown, Alava Shalom, not for the school, but for him. Would you do that if he was sitting at the table? No. Well, why would you do that with us here or whatever it might be? But you take it to the grander scale for adults, for people who start, it's a lack of awareness that Hashem is sitting right there. I won't speak Lashon Hara. I'm really careful about the Lashon Hara. I try to be careful about everything, but Lashon Hara, and imagine though I wasn't. So I'll start to tell you something about a neighbor. Would I say it? The neighbor was sitting right there? God forbid. I don't want to get myself feel so embarrassed by that. Yet we're okay with Hashem sitting right there listening. Go, really? I didn't know that. And once it becomes obvious and clear to him that everywhere he stands, he sits, he walks, Hashem is present, as then, immediately he will come to the level of awe, fear. Maybe he'll trip up in his actions. They will not be on the level of kavod he is due. We have to be careful. Also, it says, this is in Pirkei Avot, know what is above you. Very important. Know what is above you, and a seeing eye, a listening ear, and all of your actions are being recorded in a book. Now, I have told you before, I've said many times, my picture with Gehenna would be like. It's, a big giant screen with me sitting in a theater and everyone who I never knew is sitting there, and my entire life on the screen, including actions and every thought I've ever had about any person. That'd be Gehenna. That's my, you had a different take on what I'd said. I remember that. And I liked it. It's helpful to me. But what does it mean? All your actions are recorded in a book. Gemara tells us that after 120 years, a person goes to Shammai and they get their Gzar Din. Hashem says, okay, this is what's going to happen. But before he does, he opens the book of your life. This is your life. And everything is read off to you. And you sign on the dotted line. You said, yep, I did that. And I imagine that's kind of going to be a scary thing. Now, the purpose of this is not for us to walk around scared out of our minds all the time. The purpose is really, on a positive spin, is this constant awareness. To be aware, not to be concerned like what's going to happen after 120 years or what's going to, we don't really deal with that. That's why the Torah doesn't talk about, explicitly doesn't talk about heaven and hell. It doesn't talk about what happens in time of Mashiach. Again, not explicitly, because that's not what we live for. We live to serve Hashem in this world. Since Hashem watches over everything, sees everything, hears everything, everything will make an impression, will be written down in the book, whether it's for the guy's benefit or it's something negative that he did or she did. Why? Why is this important? Because we say it's a bracha. The person says, God forbid bad news. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. What does it mean, Dayan Ha'emet, the true judge? Only Hashem is the true judge. Hashem only is the only being, obviously, that can take every single thing into account. If a case comes before a judge, the judge cannot take everything into account. It's impossible. The only thing he can take into, or she can take into account, is the facts presented in the case and the person's common sense, the judge's common sense, and knowledge of whatever goes on in the world. They cannot know every single thing about this person, what caused this action, what's the reason, what prevented it. And yes, there are cases that end up with a mistake in the verdict, obviously, which is why the law, in most law-abiding countries, there are provisions for being able to appeal. But only Hashem is the Dayan Ha'emet. He's the only true judge. And therefore, every single action has to be taken into account. ואומנם, הדבר הזה אינו מצטייר היטב בשכל אדם, אלא על ידי התמדת ההתבוננות וההסתכלות הגדול. He says, look, guys, I understand, I get it. This is very, very difficult because this is not natural for us to walk around with this constant awareness of Hashem in our presence. The word in Hashem's presence. And therefore, you can only acquire that with really sitting and meditating and thinking about it a lot. Since this is very far away from our senses, our brain, our common sense doesn't just all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's right, God's right here. Got to be careful. We don't automatically go there. Except until one has done a lot of actual thought and inspection and tries to really think about this. And even after he gets to that point where he can imagine these things, this image, I'm very big into imagery, this imagery can easily dissipate if he doesn't focus on it a lot. And it turns out that just like a lot of hitbonenut, of introspection, in order to acquire this yirah, this consistent, constant level of yirah, so the opposite is what causes you the downfall. If you're not aware, you're not aware. If you're not aware, you can't have the same level of yirah as someone who does. We'll put it into simple terms. If I took a piece of tape and I put it on the ground, just laid it on the ground, and I told you just to walk on it like this, like a tightrope. I don't think anyone here, unless you've been, would have any trouble. Why not look at you? Would have any trouble walking, right? What if I put a beam 4 inches above the ground, just this much? I don't think anyone would have too much trouble. You may have a balance issue, so yes. But I put that same beam 500 feet up in the air, right? You're gonna have a lot of trouble. Why? It's the same beam. What the difference is, you see the potential disaster that could happen. So if you're walking around the world like, oh, everything is peachy keen, I'm walking on the ground literally, and I'm walking that line, I'm doing a great job, until you really realize that there's this tehom. I don't know how you say it in English. This tehom, this vast expanse underneath you that's open. That's what he talked about. He's kind of like, you know what a chiastic structure is? Okay, so A, B, B, C, C, and D. Okay, so this book is, I don't know if someone probably should do this, but I think this book might be somewhat of a chiastic structure, because he starts off the book with this topic, and this is near the end of the book now. He starts off this idea that people walk at the edge of a cliff or the edge of water and don't even realize the danger that they're in, and without paying attention, they're toast. And that's what he says, they're toast. He's saying the same thing here. He says that he says either because life gets in the way, or we just say, I just can't do this. I can't have it on my mind all the time. Any diversion, any time when your mind gets distracted, is automatically going to diminish or erase that moment, at least, the yirah, the constant yirah of Hashem. It's what Hashem commanded the king of Israel. There was a mitzvah for a king to have two Sifrei Torah. One, and not giant ones, one that would be small, that he would carry around with him wherever he went, and one to be kept in the home. Why? Because there's a halacha that says, Melech shemachal al kvodo, ein kvodo machul. If a king were to walk in the room and we wanted to stand up, he goes, no, it's okay, sit. No, he can't overlook his kavod at all. He's the top when it comes to kavod, more than a Talmud Chacham, more than a Kohen Gadol. They can be a parent, be mochel in their kavod. Melech cannot be, so he might just say, I'm the king, man, right? The capital K. So they have a mitzvah. He had to have the Torah with him and read from it all the time. Why? In order to learn that he has to constantly be in awe and in fear of Hashem. You learn from this. You can't learn yirah unless you have some constant form of reminder, learning, reading, proactively being aware of Hashem's presence. We are all at one time or another throughout our day aware of Hashem's presence, right? It could be you about to trip and you caught yourself. Oh, Baruch Hashem, I didn't trip. So Hashem helped you right there. All this is we have the awareness in life. You should be careful. Look at the way it's worded. It says, in order he should learn to fear. It doesn't say in order to fear. It says to learn to fear. It's not something that one naturally can acquire. Just the opposite. It's actually very difficult. It's distant because we're physical people. We're humans. So to constantly be aware of something that we can't see, feel, touch, or hear, at least from physically, is very difficult. The way you acquire it is only through learning. So what are you supposed to learn? You're supposed to learn Chaucer. You're supposed to learn Shakespeare. I just got online. Shakespeare Haggadah. It is, if you like Shakespeare, this is the coolest thing. It translates the entire Haggadah into Shakespearean English using quotes from throughout Shakespeare, and there's footnotes throughout the book, including you can't reproduce this without the permission of the author. Even that's in Shakespearean English. It is brilliant. I forgot who it was. Some from guy wrote the book. I have to find this from. And I just started flipping. Says, no, I'll wait till past time and start looking through it. But it's really cool. So what are you supposed to learn? You're supposed to learn these kind of things. You're supposed to learn Torah, udracheha, b'liyaseg. The Torah and its ways. What does it mean, Torah and its ways? It means how Hashem wants us to live. Learn the mitzvot. Learn ben adam l'chavero. Learn ben adam l'makom v'chulei. It means not just occasion. It means all the time. B'shivto. Now this is where I mentioned to you, Judy, that you're right partially about Shema, because listen to the word he says here. B'shivto, b'lechto, b'shochvo, uvkumo. When you're lying down, when you're walking, when you're sitting, when you're walking, when you're lying down, when you get up, which if you're not doing any of those, means you're pushing up daisies. Why? Toast, that's right. Until you could really, truly put into your brain the truth of the matter. What is it you're trying to seek? What is it you're looking for to have in your mind? The fact that the Shekhinah, the Hashem's presence, is b'chol makom, is in every place. That we're standing literally day and night, all the time in the presence of God. And then you will fear Him truthfully, in truth. This is what David davened and said. Teach me your ways. She's asking Hashem's help. Nothing to do without Hashem's help. Ask Hashem's help. You can ask Hashem's help for Hashem's help. You can ask Hashem's help for davening to Hashem. Every single thing. I want to be able to walk to my car and find my key, whatever it might be. Okay. Now, that brings us to chapter 26. Chapter 26 is special because it's the last chapter. It's the last chapter besides Chatima. The Chatima, we come to like a bit of a siyum of the book, a conclusion. But we have now, as he pours water all over himself. Yeah, it's just water. Maybe. Yeah, it's fine. It'll come out eventually. Put it in the wash and water. That's right. Perfect in this heat. Just pour it. It's very cooling. Okay. I want to mention something that I've said a few times already since we started the book. And that is that he has been building this whole time to steps and goals. The steps have been these intermediary points, whether it's been Zvizut, Nikiyut, Zehirut, Chasidut, just now Yir'ah. Until this last chapter, you didn't need to fulfill everything until you went to the next step. He said that this last chapter, Yir'ah, 2 chapters ago, you really need to have really mastered what came before that before you do this Yirat Hashem. We all do Yirat Hashem, but not to the level necessarily that's referred to in this chapter. The last chapter of the book is the topic of Kedusha. Now, I had to cancel last night's Tanya class, but last night's Tanya class was this topic also. It's incredible how it just parallels these things. And I want to ask not ask, I want to say in general the various approaches to what does it mean, Kedusha. Oh, I pressed on something here. Just a second. There. Okay. Don't touch anything. My mom used to say when I was a kid, she'd go shopping in the cart, there'd be all these other things that she didn't even just touch, and I like to touch things. Anyways, okay, what is Kedusha? So let's take the basic meaning. Let's first understand what the word means. And if you say holiness, that's really amorphous. That's how we translate it in English, but what does it mean? Okay, we're going to come to that. Let's start with the letters Kuf Daled Shin. That's the shosh, Kuf Daled Shin. It makes up many words we know. Kadosh, Kedusha, Kiddush, Kiddushin, V'hit Kadesh, Kaddish, Kedusha that we say in davening. So it all has a similar connection somehow or another. Why would marriage or the betrothal stage be called Kiddushin? Because it's a holy, say, God forbid, it's a holy matrimony. It is, it's holy, it's a holy action. But it's still, how do you define Kedusha? How do you define it? To elevate something. So, and I don't mean to make fun, but let's say I have a house at Shiputzim.
I don't mean elevate.
No, I understood that. I did.
Realm.
Oh, okay, the spiritual realm. Okay, so I get a fancier siddur. Okay, maybe you're right, but maybe you don't know why you're right. We'll see. We're going to come to that. Separate. Okay, so the classic example, right? So the classic definition is Rashi. So it is. It's going to be muvdal and mufrash. That's what Rashi says. Separate and let's just use the word separate right now. What does that mean, though? Okay, because so Rashi says at the beginning of the parasha, it says Kedoshin to you, Kedosh ani Hashem Elokechem. You should be holy because I'm holy. Yea, God. So what does that mean? God says I'm holy. So Rashi says muvdal and mufrash. What does that mean? We separate ourselves. We separate ourselves from the non-Jewish world. We separate ourselves by food. Can have kosher, non-kosher. We separate ourselves in time. We have days that are chol, days that are kadosh, such as Shabbat or Chagim. We have days, happy Tu B'Av, by the way. Make a shidduch. And we separate ourselves in many, many ways. Now, there's another sub-definition that is as follows. Am I allowed to eat, if my wife's not present, am I allowed to eat 5 hamburgers? Yeah, I'm assuming they're kosher. Am I allowed to? Am I permitted? Yeah. Is there anything to halachically prevent me from eating it? Unless it's Yom Kippur and everything. Why? Tell me why.
Because it makes a glutton.
Oh.
And it is detrimental
to your health. Excellent. Okay. So you're right, except for one word. I don't know if I would say it's halachically prohibited. It's not halachically prohibited. It is prohibited because you're a cardiologist, yes. So why is it prohibited? So the Ramban, why is it it escapes me? He says that a person has to be careful in the amount that they eat, so they should not be what's called the minuval b'shut haTorah, which literally means a person, it's the Ramban, the minuval, the person, you call him a manuval in English. I don't know how you translate it in English, but someone who's like with the permission of Torah. What does that mean with the permission of Torah? Because again, halachically, I am allowed to eat that. The fact that I shouldn't is because I need to separate myself from being that kind of person. Okay. But it goes beyond that. That's the basic first step. You have to understand that. There's a second step. And again, this goes to Tanya. And it's a very simplistic, although complicated section of the book. Very simplistic statement he makes. Anything that brings you closer to Hashem is Kedusha. Anything that distances you is not Kedusha. It's what's called Sitra Achra, which we're going to talk about. We talk about in other contexts. So that's why I said what you said about like Siddur or something like that could be Kedusha also is true, because it could elevate you spiritually, change your approach to Tefillah. So yes.
When I thought of elevating, I thought of more knowing what you're doing as you're doing it.
Also,
like bringing awareness.
Exactly. So anything that brings you closer to acting, doing, thinking Hashem and His mitzvot, and what we're here for in this world, is Kedusha. Now let's take a look in this chapter. Be'ur midat HaKedusha. You'll notice he doesn't say in this chapter, well, you have to have done everything else in this book before you do this. Doesn't say that. How do we know? Give me a proof text, pasuk. How do we know that you don't have to know everything in this book in order to become kadosh, and that you actually already are? Give you a hint. Sefer Shemot, Perak, I think Yud Tet. I'll take psukim for 1,000 art. Shemot, right? He says that, and he's right. Where's he get that idea from? He says that Vaten tiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. Hashem says before we have Matan Torah. He says, you will be to me a kingdom of priests and a nation that is holy. We are called the Goy Kadosh. We say Shabbat at Mincha, Ata Echad, Shivcha Echad, Mikam Chayisol, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Then we talk about Kedusha, Kedusha, Kedusha. So we are the Goy Kadosh. We already have an inherent Kedusha by the fact that we have the Neshama Elokit, the godly soul. Now let's see what he says here. Inyana Kedusha Kafulu. This is going to surprise you, because it doesn't seem to make sense until we get to the explanation. He says like this, Inyana Kedusha Kafulhu. The idea, the concept of Kedusha is a double thing. Dahainu, Tchilato Avodah, the first part of it is really working at it, the Sofo Gemul. And the end result is reward. Tchilato Hishtadlut, it starts off with doing your effort. The Sofo Matana, in the end, is a gift. Well, what does that mean? What kind of gift? What kind of reward? No, we're not talking about Gan Eden. He's not lihitachesing to the Olam Haba, because that's not what this book is about. How a person acts to lekadesh themselves, to sanctify, and use that word right now very loosely, to sanctify themselves. The sofo masha mekadshimoto, and the end result is how they, let's see what that means, sanctify him. Now we'll see. The Gemara tells us in Yoma, Adam mekadesh atzmo me'at. A person does a small amount of effort in trying to raise their level of kedusha in this world. Mikadshino to harbe. They elevate him a lot in kedusha. Again, hang in there. He'll explain. Milimata. He does a lot. He does it here in this world. Mikadshimo to milimala. They then elevate him in the heavens. Okay. So what does this mean? In general, it means what it means with everything else we've talked about in this book. You need to do your hishtadlut. Translated in English, you need to do your hishtadlus. Okay? That's what it is in English, no? There is a need for us to be proactive. We have to do something. We can't sit back and say, okay, I'm working on the midav nekiyut, and then you don't. I'm working on zrizut, and you don't. You got to do something. But it can't be perfunctory, like, okay, I'm going to run the show. There, I did my hishtadlut for the day. It means you really need to do something about it. When you do it, we see this concept throughout the Gemara, is that it says you open up the amount of like the size of a needle, and Hashem opens up this vast amount. All you need to do is your part. Because one of the things we forget, it's not just that Hashem is present, he's our partner. He's the managing partner. He's the partner. So if you have a partner that they want the best for you because it's good for them too. Not that God needs anything, but Hashem wants the best for us, his children. So therefore we seize this little bit of an effort, right? We go back to this mashal I gave you a long time ago. It's not mine. I heard it. It's beautiful about, getting a baby to start to walk, or a toddler. You hold the baby by the fingers, you take a couple steps, and you're so excited, and then you let go just a teeny bit, and they take 1/2 a step. Yay, right? You throw Kiddush and Shul, and you take more steps further back, and the child walks over to you further. This growth, this encouragement, there's a partnership there. All you need to do is your part, and Hashem's there to help you. Same thing is true when it comes here. Now, the level of Kedusha, considering this is the Yesharim, all these topics we've gone through, and now this is the last topic, we're not talking just about, you got to just Kadesh yourself. He's saying you have to disconnect from the Chomriyut, from the physical part of the world. Now, wait, didn't he say at the beginning of the book, we're not looking for ascetics. We're not for people who sit on a mountaintop and stare at the sun and just stare at their neighbor, right? We're not looking for that. He's going to explain. And he's always trying to cling to Hashem at all times. And that's one of the reasons that Nevi'im, not all of them, were called Malachim. As it says, Kisitei Kohen Yishmu V'dat V'Torah Yivakshu Mepiu Ki Malach Hashem Tzvakot Ve'omer Vayu Malidim B'Malachei Elokim. So he gives a couple proof texts that Nevi'im, including Aaron Kohen, were at the level when you called them Malach. Now, here's what he says. It sounds like, wait a minute, he doesn't want us to be sitting on the mountaintop and complete disconnect from the world. That's not what Hashem wants, ever. What does it mean? But even when you're doing things you have to do, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to do some kind of relaxation, you have to do something. There are things you need to do in life. You have to go to work. You should never disconnect from the connection you have to Hashem, even when you're doing those things. One more sentence, and I'll give you a comment. Okay, what does this mean? Sometimes, again, I forget who I tell what to, so sorry if I've told you this one before. Of Herschel Schachter, Shlita, Rosh Hashiva YU. First time I ever heard him speak, I think I told you here that I try to take notes. You don't try to take notes in the shir. He's just like trying to catch bullets. Anyways, so the shir, the title was fabulous. I still remember the general idea of the shir, but the title was the best. It was called the Choshen Mishpat, the forgotten section of Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch was made up of 4 sections. Or Chaim, day-to-day life stuff. Yeridea, Yisr Heter means, kosher, treif, those kind of things. Even Ezer, marriage, divorce, etc. And then Choshen Mishpat, civil law. So he referred to the fourth volume of Choshen Mishpat as the forgotten section of Shulchan Aruch. What does that mean? He said people can be very, quote, from, and they can be shuckling and then putting a tefillin and they're really nice to their spouse and everything. And then they go out in the business world and they're not so nice. And they charge interest and they try to do all these loopholes and they cheat people. And it says, no. That's why the very first question after 120 years, according to the Gemara, is Nasata v'natata v'emunah. Did you deal faithfully in business? Meaning, did you take the Shulchan Aruch, so to speak, with you everywhere you went? Did you live by the Shulchan Aruch? It's easy to be from in shul. It's easy to be from under the chuppah. Are you from in business with your partner? Are you treating him or her the right way? That's where really the proving ground is. And he says the same thing here is true as well. He says that when a person can have this connection to Hashem, a person can have the awareness of Hashem when they're learning right now, when they're sitting in a shir, when they're going to daven, when they're listening to Torah tapes. It's, quote, simple, because you're doing something proactively. But when you're not, when you're eating and when you're drinking and you're sleeping, well, I want you to do when you're sleeping proactively. But he taught, this is nothing new in this book. We saw this already. We saw this when it came to almost every other midah early in the book. It says it's a matter of you do it, but you don't, but you're doing l'shem shamayim. You're exercising is extremely important. So they tell me, is extremely important for your physical health and your mental health. But don't do it just for the sake of exercise. You do it because you want to stay healthy, to be able to serve Hashem. And the same thing is true when it comes to Kedusha. The things that you do, your awareness stays there, and you're doing it to keep a connection with Hashem. Okay. One more paragraph. Truth is, it's a very tall order. It's even harder maybe than Yirat Hashem and the awareness of Hashem's presence all the time. This is a matter of action. Constant action level of Kedusha. We're human beings, we're flesh and blood. That's why I say that the end result of Kedusha is a gift. Why? What a person can do is running after, chasing after this knowledge, this true knowledge. Always understanding, trying to do the best you can with every action in Kedusha. Hasofu, the end result is, Shakadosh Baruch Hu yadmicheu baderech hazeh. God's going to help you down that path. Shu chafetz alechet ba, that he wants to go down. V'yashrei alav kedushato v'kadsheu, and he'll straighten out his path towards that level of Kedusha, and he will elevate him. V'az yitzlach b'yado zeh hadavar. He will, this is the word you were saying before, he will be successful. Why? And then what happens to you? It will be constant, it will be consistent. You do the right thing, you try your best, Hashem's there to help you. That which nature prevents him from doing, Hashem will help and will give him the assistance. Hashem will not prevent any good coming to those who walk truthfully in Hashem's ways. Therefore, it says in the mamar that I mentioned, Adam mekadesh atzmo me'at. We do our part a little bit, just do some, working towards kedusha. That which is the person is able to achieve and acquire with his ishtadlut. Then what does that mean? It's the help that Hashem gives us, as I have said. So it's a tall order, but also you have to understand that it's the tall order where Hashem's there to help. And that's I think, very encouraging, because it tells us that even though that these things he's been trying to have us do, he's been encouraging us, teaching us throughout this book, we're not done yet with the book, it's this reminder as we get to the end of the book that Hashem is helping us with absolutely every single step, not just with Kedusha. It's with everything. How do I know that? Because Kedusha is the last step in this book. Means that to get to Kedusha, the ultimate, yes, you do need those steps. Well, if he's helping us with Kedusha, he's helping us to get to Kedusha. He's helping us with everything, not just the zizut and cute. It's everything. And when we realize that also accomplishes the last two chapters, which is Yirah, which is the idea of the constant awareness of Hashem to keep us focused on what we're doing. Wish you all a good day. Try and stay cool. Get together again, Bezrat Hashem next week. Next, I'm guessing